I love a parade. When I was young, our town had a parade every year in the month of May to celebrate the blooming of the dogwood trees. And the dogwood parade had everything. It had marching bands, fire trucks, it had convertibles with waving politicians, it had a dogwood queen and her court. And because there was a National Guard armory nearby, the parade always had jeeps and trucks and even artillery. As a young boy, I was impressed. And as a teenager, I marched in that parade with the band. Parades are supposed to be impressive. Otherwise, why would you bother having one? It was the same in Jesus' day. Because the Jewish festival Passover celebrated God's liberation of Abraham and Sarah's descendants from slavery in Egypt centuries earlier, the celebration of liberating Passover in Jerusalem in Jesus' day, a time living under the thumb of Roman rulers, that made the holiday a time that was ripe for protests and even rebellion. So, before each Passover, the Romans would put on a parade. The Roman soldiers would march with swords and spears flashing. The Roman chariots, the jeeps of the day, would roll through the streets. And the Roman commanders and Roman officials would ride on their great horses. All of this parade is meant to show the impressive strength of Rome that had conquered and which for decades had occupied Israel, to remind the Jews who was boss. The annual Roman parade was a Passover warning. If you dared to protest, or if you tried to incite a rebellion during the celebration, the might of Rome would squash you like a bug. But then a few days before the Passover, an impromptu parade was held to welcome Jesus. No legions of soldiers, no government leaders or Roman officers, just a guy riding a ridiculous donkey with peasants waving palm branches and praising him and declaring him to be their king. Surely Rome was puzzled, because this guy, this Jesus, was not like any Roman fool. He made an absolutely unlikely entrance. Although some of the people hailed him as king and Messiah, so maybe there could be trouble during Passover after all. And then in the long reading of the gospel story we just heard, the rest of the week unfolded. Jesus was betrayed by a follower and abandoned by friends. Jesus was arrested, and then a crowd of people was asked whether they wanted either Jesus or an actual insurrectionist named Barabbas to be released. They chose Barabbas, leading to Jesus' crucifixion. The inscription on Jesus' cross read, "The King of the Jews." But by then, those were words of mockery because all of his followers were gone. And alone, except for two thieves who were crucified with him, Jesus died utterly forsaken. And at the death of this unlikely-looking king, an unexpected voice spoke up. The centurion, the Roman officer in charge of execution, the one who was neither a disciple nor a believer, the centurion spoke the word of truth. Truly, this man was God's son. We gather here